Things going wrong.
There you go.
And we are recording. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the fourth of our, or at least the fourth month of our Learn with Google 2022. We're running these every month this year on the third Thursday of the month at 3:30 Australian time, or Australian Eastern Standard Time, and 5:30 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time. So thanks for joining us. We're just going to kick off by, first of all, acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet. Because we're coming virtually, that could be anywhere. So we've got all these lovely artworks that Google actually commissioned from this Aboriginal art group called Always Will Be, or Nungala Creative is the name of the group. But we acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we meet, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. And we honour the presence of the ancestors who reside in the imagination of the lands on which we meet. And over to you, Steve.
Nice, thanks, man. Kia ora whanau. Nā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Kia papatūruku tēnā koe, ki te whare tēnā koe, ki te tupuna tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa, tihei Māori ora. So and I'd like to also acknowledge and respect Ngāiwi Māori as the tangata whenua of Aotearoa. And we're committed to upholding the principles and partnerships of Te Tiriti o the Treaty of Waitangi. So welcome in, everyone.
Good on you. Thanks, Steve. For those that we have not met before, this is the Google for Education team here in Australia. We are a growing team. I think when I started, there was only like 2 or 3 people on the team, and we've got quite a few now. Everyone has a specialty, and you can see them up there on the board. But if you ever need anything from us, please do reach out. We're a friendly bunch. We don't bite, and we like helping people. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking about a few things around this topic of grading and looking at student results. And we're trying to approach it from a few different angles here. So first of all, I'll be talking about some grading things in classroom, some tips and tricks and things in classroom. You may be aware of them, you may not. Some of them are a little bit niche. So we'll talk about those. I'm going to hand over to Steve to talk through some stuff around BigQuery and Data Studio. It's not as scary as it sounds, and it's some pretty interesting stuff. So Steve will take us through that. We'll mention some other data viz tools. There's a term for you, data viz.
Nice.
It simply means data visualization. It's simply a way of taking your data and being able to visualize it to make it more meaningful. So there's a couple of other classroom data viz tools that are not made by Google. They're third-party tools, but we think they're pretty cool, so I just want to mention them. And then we'll spend a little bit of time just going through some of the new stuff that Google has done recently in the last month and share that with you. So, and we've got some time for Q&A at the end, hopefully. Nice. So we are talking about Google Workspace for Education, this wonderful suite of tools that Google makes and gives away to schools for free, or if you want to pay a little bit for it, we'll actually give you some extra features as well. But there's tons of interesting stuff in there. The one I want to talk to you today about is this one called Classroom, which I'm sure many of you know about or maybe have used before. There's 5 things in Classroom I want to tell you about. First of all is this idea of grading categories. It's kind of hidden away, so you may not have discovered it, but we'll talk about how you set up grading categories. I just want to give you some tips on working with rubrics that you probably know is there, how you set up a comment bank. We'll look at some things about the Classroom gradebook that I didn't know until I started dabbling with it, so I'll share them with you. Maybe you don't know them as well. And just some ideas there about how you export some grades out to sheets. So that's what I'd like to cover. I'm going to hopefully, okay, I'll get that up on the other screen so I remember what I'm doing. Let's pop into Classroom for a second. So this is my Google Classroom. There is, by the way, I'll mention one little thing before I get started. This customize button changed recently. This is a very small tip, but the customize button now has this thing down here where you can actually add specific colors to a classroom. I don't know that it's a life-changing feature, but you know, it's kind of nice to have. What it means is if you select a photo for your classroom, like let's say you pick that one, then when you do that, this changes the theme of everything here on the class to blue, and you'll notice that the so if I just save that, you'll notice that the header is blue, and so are all the buttons. And if you go to the classwork page, all the text on here is in blue. That's the highlight color. So now there's a very small change there where if you change that, if you want the blue header, but say you want, I don't know, orange text, you can do that. I don't know why you want to do that.
Actually, Chris, when I saw this, I thought, I know that Chris will love to have like a clash of blue and pink because that's just the sort of guy he is. He loves to have different things there. He's not particular about his outlook at all.
Well, you know where I did notice it, Steve, is if you go to something like, say, for example, that one I had before, if you go to, say, that one, like that one's grey. It doesn't actually have a dominant colour. So it chooses black. And so you might want to say, well, I like the grey, but I want the headings to be orange. So I don't know. It's a little thing, but you can have it if you want it. Anyway, what I wanted to really show you here was a couple of things in the gradebook. And I have probably lost my notes. So there you go. I'll go to my notes page over there. Okay. So setting up grade categories. So first of all, when you grade student work in Classroom, you can obviously give it a score out of whatever. So when you create an assignment, you can say how much the assignment's worth out of. It could be 10, 20, 50. It can be ungraded if you want. But when you do multiple assignments, the question is, how do you add them up? Now, a lot of people will actually pull the grades out of Classroom and they'll import them into their student information system or their grading system, whatever it is at your school. And that's fine, you can do that. But what might be useful to know is if you click on the little gear wheel up the top there and scroll all the way to the bottom, you've got this grade calculation area here, right? And you can actually set up grade categories. So for example, if you want to say that, 50% of the student grade comes from the classwork they do, maybe 30% from exams and 20% from homework, or whatever it is for you guys. Okay, maybe you don't do exams or homework, but you might have different categories that you're using. So you can set these up in here by adding a grade category. It does have to add up to 100. So let's say I change that one to 40. Now I've got remaining 10%, and I can say add another grade category, and this might be, I don't know. Quick, Steve, help me.
Thinking, Chris. What about thinking?
Thinking. Okay. I'm going to grade their thinking, and 10% of their grade is going to come from thinking. That's really weird. But you can do that, right? And it'll tell you down here, when this gets down to 0, you can't add any more grades. So when you do that, and I'll just save that. Oh, sorry, I won't save that because there's one last thing I wanted to show you in there. And that was, as you do that, you've got this option down here to have no overall grade. So it actually won't give you a final, it just won't tally anything, right? Just leave it blank. Or you can total the points up. And that is exactly what it sounds like. So if there's a score out of 10 and a score out of 10, and a score out of 10, it'll give you a score out of 30. It'll have to add the 3 things up. But if you weight by category, where you start to say, well, some things are worth more than others, it will actually do that weighting for you as it works out its final grade. Now, if you want to know more about how that works, in the slide deck, and maybe, Stevie, you can drop the link to the slide deck in the chat, that would be helpful. Sure. I'll put a link in here that takes you to the support article on Google that actually explains how the grading systems work. So if you want to know, like, if you choose total grading or category grading, what's the mathematics behind it? How does it actually work it out? It's all listed here and actually explains that to you. So there you go. Marking rather than grading. Yeah, good question, Nigel. What you'll find is if you go into your actual Google account, so you click on this thing here and say manage a Google account and go in there, check which language you're using. If you're using English UK, it will use certain terminology, and if you're using English US, it will use a different terminology. I think this account of mine is probably set to, if I go to personal, I think it's under personal info. Somewhere here, language. Oh, so mine's set to language United States. So I'm going to change that because I would.
Hey, Chris, you can actually add pirate as a language and Klingon if you really want those.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I was looking at it the other day. There's Klingon and there's pirate.
Wow. Well, I'm going to stick to English because it's kind of my thing. But oh, it's got Australian English. Look at that. I love it. Okay, so you set it to Australian English and then move that up and make Australian English the preferred one. You can have multiple languages in here if you want, but whatever's your preferred one is what it should use. When you do that, it should then change the terminology in Classroom to match the appropriate terms. So hopefully, Nigel, that answers your question. Let me pop back over here to Classroom and we'll go back to where we were. So anyway, so that's how you set up the weighted grading. When I do some grading in a second, I'll show you where that weighting actually comes into play. Let me come out of there for now, and let's go into classwork. And I just want to show you some things with rubrics. So some of you probably know that when you create a task, so let's create an assignment, for example, and I'll just call it, task 2 because I think I've got a task 1. When I go and do that, and you'd write your instructions and whatnot in there, first of all, you know how I added those grade categories? When you add the grade categories, you get this extra drop down here, and this is where they show up. If you don't set grade categories, you won't see this drop down. Okay, so this is one of Steve's thinking tasks, right? So it's a thinking task, and maybe it's worth, I don't know, 20 points, let's just say, or maybe it could be ungraded. But when you want to add a rubric to a class, you click on this rubric button down here, and you can create a rubric, reuse a rubric, or import from sheets. Now, I don't want to take up too much time, but just quickly, if I go to create rubric, this is what it looks like in the creation screen. So you give it a criteria, a description of the criteria, and then you create your sort of levels of performance, okay? And you can give each one a points value. Interestingly, I'm not going to go through that because I'm going to show you a finished one. It'll be more sensible. The other thing you can do with a rubric is if you've got a task somewhere else in this classroom that uses a rubric and you want to reuse the same rubric, you can actually click this reuse button. It'll go through and look at all the tasks, sorry, all the assignments and things inside Classroom that currently have a rubric attached to it. And if you want to reuse one, say this one, you can say select, and it will import a copy of the rubric from the other task into this one. And so you can see there it is. Now that it's in there, I can open that up and show you this is what one looks like when it's done. And you can see you've got this one's on persuasion, originality, and spelling and grammar, and it's got each of these sort of performance areas. Now, if I was to edit this by clicking on the edit button, you'll notice there's an option up here to use scoring or not. A lot of schools prefer to use a rubric without scores on it. There's a lot of research that actually says that kids respond better when they're not getting scored, but just being given advice. So you can actually turn the scoring off if you want, and that takes away the scoring. So all students will get is a description of the performance level that they've achieved without actually putting a number on it, which a lot of teachers prefer. We like to call that pointless assessment, but that means something else.
And also, Chris, a little hot tip with those weightings. If you want to give, say, a homework exercise and you just want to mark it as done or not done, some people give it a score of 1. 1 means done, 0 means not done. Give it a weighting of 0, it's not going to impact your final grade.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Thanks.
Nice. When you, if I just, what am I? If I save that, there you go. So that's the second way of getting one. You import it from another thing. And the third way you can get a rubric in here, I'll just get rid of this for now. I'll just delete it from there and I'll show you. The third way is to import it from Sheets. Now, when you import from Sheets, in fact, let me just go back and put that back in there because I want to show you how you get it to a sheet because it might not be what you expect. When you go in there and look at that rubric, up in the top corner, there's an option here to export to Sheets. So generally speaking, you would want to build your rubric inside Classroom the manual way. And once you've done it, you can then export that to a sheet. When you export it to a sheet, which I'll do right now, and click in there and say view, you see that opens up in a sheet. That's actually what it looks like. That's what I mean. It may not be the layout you're expecting there. There is a very specific layout that Sheets needs for this to happen. And it does actually give you a little warning up the top where it says, it is recommended you do not edit rubrics in spreadsheet format. You can do it, just don't mess it up, right? Because if you mess it up, it won't work. So that's why they recommend not doing it. Because, but you could. Now that you've done that, if I just go back to Classroom and let's say I just remove that again. Right, let me show you how you'd bring in a rubric now from the sheet. So if I click the third option here, import from a sheet, you can see I can now go over here, find that sheet. It should be in my, where did I put it? Oh, task 2, that's the one. So if there's one there called a writing rubric. I'll use that one. Oh, actually, I'll use this one. This is a really good one. This is a rubric I used when I was teaching multimedia and getting kids to make video projects. So like there it is as a sheet. If I click on the add button, it will import that in from the sheet. And you can see there it is there. And this one's actually quite an extensive one. It's got a lot of bits and pieces in it. Okay. So whatever's in that sheet, you can suck it in from the whatever's in the sheet, you can suck it into Classroom and it'll arrange it nicely for you. And of course, if you've got it, then you've also got the option to, after I save it, there are errors on the page. Really? What are the errors? I don't know what I've done there. But anyway, I'm going to ignore that for now, as I usually do.
And they're really good if you've got like a school-wide rubric you want to use as well. Share the sheet with everyone. Absolutely. Everyone can bring that in. You've got a common task, common rubric, good times.
Yeah, if you can organise yourself as a staff to do it, it's great to have like a shared folder on Drive somewhere. and people put all their rubrics into that shared folder, and then when someone needs one, everyone knows where to go to look to find that rubric and just import it in. Have a really nice, much more standardized way to do it. Any questions on that one? All right, fantastic. I am going to go into, I think it was task 1 I want to show you. And you can see this has got a rubric attached to it. So let's view that assignment. And you can see I've given this out to a bunch of students. The one I want to show you is this student here, Walter Mellon. Look at the names on these students. So here is a task that a student has done, and you can see there was a rubric attached to this task. And the thing about grading, when you're in that sort of grading or marking phase of the student cycle, to mark it is as simple as saying, oh, you know, it was, you can see as I mouse over these things, it's got little descriptors, but if I want to see more, I can unfold that and it actually tells me what each one means. Again, this is based on what the rubric said. So, you know, if this might be satisfactory work, I can click on that. And then when I scroll down to the next one, organization, it was, well, it was organized, it was developing, and communication, you know, was pretty good. And the visual design, there was really none. So I'll say it was lacking, right? And when I do all that, you can see what it's done is it's filled in the rubric here for me like that. Just fold that one up. So there's the rubric, just like that. And of course, the student sees that as well. So it's really clear, you know, from all the way through the process, what the intent was, how it was graded, and so on. The other thing, this was a non-graded rubric, so this was a pointless assignment. And you can see it hasn't actually added a points value up in here because I didn't choose points. But had I chosen points, it would have automatically worked out the grade here for me as well. So that's a nice thing to have.
And you can change those rubric grades as well, can't you, Chris? So once, if they hand it back, fix it up, hand it back in again, you can go in and alter that rubric and move it all up. So it does give you that learning focused conversation.
Yep, definitely. Now, speaking of learning focused conversations, one of the things you really want to be doing when you're grading student work is to leave them very specific, kind, helpful feedback. And so one of the things that is useful to do that quickly, especially if you're making the same kinds of feedbacks often, check your spelling, or what does this sentence mean, whatever those sort of comments you want to make, it's useful to know that right here there's a comment bank. So when you click that icon there, it opens up the comment bank. And the comment bank's really easy to use. Like, so for example, this word canst, I'm not sure if that's spelt right or not, because I don't speak oldie English. But if I want to leave a comment for that, I can click on that and add a comment from the bank here. Now, the quickest way to do that is if you type a hash, just a hash symbol, it will pop up all the comments in the comment bank. And the more I type now on any word in any of the comments, the more it'll filter down. So for example, I know this one is about spelling. So if I type SP, right, it automatically filters my list down to the word spelling. And then I just need to click on that and it adds that in there, and I hit the comment, and now that comment's added in there. So just remember, the hash will bring up all the comments in the comment bank. Now, what if you want more comments? What if there's not enough comments there? Well, I happen to have right here somewhere, I think I linked it here, a sample comment bank. So here's an example. This is just a Google Doc. It's got a bunch of potential comments you might want to use in your comment bank. And again, you might want to set this up as a shared Google Doc, and all the staff contribute their comments. You can organize them and put, these are the positive ones, these are the sort of reinforcing ones, whatever. So you can put them into categories. But the thing is, once you have these comments, if you simply copy them, Control-C, and I go back over here now into here, and I say add to bank. When I do that, it'll say add multiple comments by starting a new line. So when I paste all those comments and do this, watch what happens. It goes, if you're looking at what's happening over on the right-hand side of the screen there, it's actually importing all those comments in one by one. So long as each one is on a new line, it'll treat it as a new comment. So now that I've done that, I think, I've got, I've got that there. I want to say that was descriptive. So I click that and type hash descriptive, right? Boom, there it is. So adding to the comment bank and using that sort of hash idea there to sort of quickly pull one out is, I think, a really great way to speed up the grading process for teachers. They're doing this often over and over again the same way. So that's that.
Hey, Chris, Jonathan just asked a question saying, are the comments linked to the activity only, to the assignment only, or to the classroom?
I think they're linked to the classroom. Pretty sure they're linked to the classroom. There's an easy way for me to tell, and that would be if I just exit this. I'm going to return this work to Walter Mellon. It's returning the work to the student there. But if I just pop over to here and go to the classwork and pick a different task, so let's pick, I don't know, creative writing task. Let's see if I view assignment and I'll pick a student and I look in the comments. Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah. So
yes, the comments are linked to the classroom, not to the task.
Perfect.
All right, good question. Okay, I'm just going to close that up and close that up so I don't get into too much bother here. Too many things open. There we go. The classroom grade book, we're all probably aware that there's a grade book here. Just a couple of things about the grade book I wanted to point out. You can manually grade from this as well. So, for example, if there was a student that hadn't submitted something, like this student here, so Helen Highwater hasn't got a grade here, so I can go in here and put a grade in there, and I can do it directly into the grade book. So that's fine. The other little thing that I learned is that when you are grading, if you press the enter key, it will automatically go down through the grades. So if you want to very quickly just add grade, 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 you can do it really quickly here in the grade book. You can also return work. So once work is submitted, so this task 1, for example, I can actually return all the work to all the students from here, simply by clicking return all, and some of those assignments aren't actually done yet, so it'll warn me about that and say these students haven't actually turned them in or handed them in, depending on what language you've got. So there's that. The other thing to know, so let me just fix this. My little scroll bar thing is, there it is, which is the one I wanted to show you, this one here. So these two assignments here, with these two assignments here, it was a similar assignment, but it was differentiated. So some students got one version of the assignment and other students got a different version of the assignment. And you can see that the students who got, version 1, the Archer's Paradox, they've been given a grade, and the students who didn't get that, it was not assigned to them. And so, and you can see over here in this column, some students were assigned that task and some were not. So if a student is not assigned a task, it won't be reflected over here in the final grade. Okay, it just ignores it completely. Of course, if you ask students to do something that, if I get my little scrolly thing here, like this one here, for example, this was a classwork task. It was not graded, so all it shows you here is that it was turned in. It doesn't pretend to try and show you a grade because there wasn't a grade. It was a non-graded task, so it just says whether it was turned in or not, or whether the student had submitted it. So yeah, it's just a couple of little tips there about the grade book. It's quite good, and you can go up to the gear wheel in the top. Oh, sorry, not that gear wheel. Now this is one of the strange things about Classroom that I never quite understood why we do it this way. But if I go to an individual task, so I'm now back in the classwork page, and I go to any individual task, then the gear wheel up on the corner here gives me the option to copy all those grades out to a Google Sheet, or to export them out as a CSV file. And I can either get all the grades for all the topics as a CSV file, or just this specific task as a CSV file. And for those that aren't sure, CSV, comma separated value, it's just like an easy format to import into a spreadsheet. So if you want to take those out and import it into your student system or Excel or whatever else you want to put it into, CSV is the way to go. I know Steve's shocked that I said the Excel word. Otherwise, if you say copy grades to a Google Sheet, it will actually generate a brand new Google Sheet for you, like so. There you go. And you can see it's listed everything there. And this is a demonstration class. There's a lot of non-marks in here, but you guys get the idea. So it'll just generate that sheet for you automatically. Once it's in a spreadsheet, you can manipulate it any way you like. So if you have a different grading system of adding things up, you can handle that yourself the same way you'd handle it in any other spreadsheet.
And a nice point about that, Chris, as well, if you notice it's got the students' email addresses in column C. And if you're thinking about importing grades into something, having something common to everything is really important. So if you're using the student's email, you can start to cross-reference that with other things.
Good point.
Stand by for more.
All right, yeah. Steve's going to talk about that. So that's all I wanted to cover. Just a couple of things there about Google Classroom. Maybe you knew all that. Maybe some of those things were new to you, but hopefully you got some decent tips out of that. Stephen, I am going to hand over to you because you're going to tell us all the really sort of cool stuff.
Thank you, Christopher.
Do you want to share your screen, or do you just want me to keep sharing? And you
can keep sharing. It's all good.
Because you want to show some live stuff, don't you?
No, I'm going to kind of click through this and just sort of talk through it, because if I start going live, it's going to be a lot of stuff.
All right. So do you really want to start here?
Yeah, why not? So, so what you've just been looking at inside Classroom is everything that's done inside your domain and also inside Classroom is logged. And those logs all sit in the back of your admin console. And if you're using the fundamentals, you can dig in there and you can find all this info. If you've upgraded to Plus or to Teaching, Learning, or Standard, you can actually use a few more tools that are added on to find this information. So the Classroom logs make a lot of sense for us. And the ability to grab that information is what we're going to kind of look at now. So we'll jump across to the next one, Chris. And when you're inside the admin console, there is a whole lot of info that comes out of it. So I've just up the top right is security info that comes out. Down the bottom right is your highlights. So how much storage is being used, how the file's being shared, different accounts, all that sort of stuff. So all this information is inside your console. Down on the bottom left is if you've upgraded to Workspace Plus, you'll see this in your admin console, BigQuery export. And it allows you to automate the export of all this stuff. It also allows you to bring in a whole lot of other stuff as well. So little cartoon at the top there with Buzz and Woody, data everywhere, of course. So there is a pile of data that sits inside your console, and it lives inside your console, doesn't go anywhere else unless you want it to. And that's a big part about the data privacy. You own all the data. So this is going to show you how to get some of that stuff out. So we'll jump to the next one, Chris. So we've got this tool called BigQuery, which I'll come back to in a minute. And we've got another tool called Data Studio. And by using those two together, you can report on your classroom usage, your engagement, all the things that have gone on. You can also do what's called set up a BigQuery export, and we'll look at that in a minute. And you can link that to Data Studio. And I know at the moment I'm kind of talking lots of words, but basically if you think about inside your domain is all this information. Also inside your school is a whole lot of information. You can set up something called BigQuery, which links it. And then Data Studio is the output. So the pictures you're seeing on here is what a Data Studio dashboard looks like. And a really nice thing about Data Studio is it's just inside your domain, in your waffle, go to your 9 dots, whatever you want to call it, and you'll see Data Studio in there. Or just go datastudio.google.com.
Let me see.
You can give it to students, and students can use Data Studio to start to visualize data as well. So
it's in here, Steve.
It should be. Or just do a bit of, or just let's just go datastudio.google.com.
Data Studio. This is another Google tool, and not a lot of people know about it, and it's super useful.
And if you want to talk to students about data, big data, how to manage data, it gives you more than a sheet will do. So on here there are a whole lot of data sources, there are a whole lot of templates that are there. The ones up the top are some examples of info you can pull in from AdWords searches and all that sort of stuff as well. So these are a Google document. They are shareable like a Google document. They can be public, they can be private, whatever you want. So Data Studio is a tool, and it's a tool to allow you to play with data. So you can give students a spreadsheet, set them up with Data Studio and let them go for it, basically. And it's all drag and drop stuff as well. So it's really great. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Data Studio.
Can I just quickly point out too, in where I live, I used to be a teacher of computer studies. So one of the things I had to teach was databases. And when I was teaching, we would often use Microsoft Access to teach that, right? And that's pretty standard. But if you become a Google school and you're using Chromebooks and you're using Workspace and everything, you probably won't be able to run Microsoft Access. So Data Studio becomes a really good alternative to that because it does all of the stuff that databases do. It uses multiple data sources and stuff. So if you are one of those nerdy people like me who teach databases at some point in your life, Data Studio is a really great alternative to look at for teaching that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Back to you.
Sweet. So if you're looking at this, there are actually pre-built templates you can use as well. So it's a matter of grabbing a copy of the template, connecting some stuff together. There are a few steps in there, and you can start to visualize this stuff. Right. Now, because Data Studio is a data repository, you can bring in whatever else you want to as well. So BigQuery I've talked about. At the top right is a little diagram I spent literally minutes making, where BigQuery is the bit in the middle. It's your connector, if you like. It's like your multi-board that you plug all your plugs into. And you can drag in things from the admin console, from Sheets, from your student management system, and then you can spit it out to Data Studio. So BigQuery sits in Google Cloud, and it is a cloud connector. When you start to play with BigQuery, you can choose a whole pile of data sources as well that link into BigQuery. Now, there is a cost involved with BigQuery. Now, luckily for schools, if you have a look at those costs, it's 2 cents per gigabyte of data. It's $5 per 5 terabytes of queries. So a terabyte is 1,000 gig. So if you look at that, most schools will go, there's no way we're ever hitting that cap. You also get a terabyte of query data and 10 gig of storage per month for free. So our cloud compatriots hate me saying this, but schools can do most of this for free, unless you're dragging in absolute tons of data, and you do get some warnings about that. But for what you want to do at your school, you can start off for free, basically. So that's what BigQuery is. It's a warehouse of data that lives in the cloud. You own that data still. Okay. Right, let's jump across to the next one.
Right.
So thinking about that, BigQuery sits in the middle. It's a cloud-based bunch of tools that allow you to do stuff. So admin console and Sheets or your student management system are over on the left-hand side there. BigQuery sucks it all in and then spits it out to something. And it automates this as well. Once you've got it set up, it'll run once a month, once a day, once a year if you want. So if you had all your SMS data set up, you connect it, you tell BigQuery to run once a month, bring it down, show it on the dashboard, here's all our information. All right, let's jump to the next one. So thinking about how this actually works, there's a couple of things you need to do. So you need to set up a Google Cloud account. So what it will do is you go to the Google Cloud platform site, you set up an account. Within that account, they'll ask you for your credit card details, purely because you're setting up a billing account. It'll also at the top say you get $300 worth of credits to start with. Now, I got my first bill from Data Studio because I've been playing with it a lot this month, and it was 1 cent. So the raw sum of 1 cent got added to my credit card. So that is something we do need to tell you about. You do need to set up what's called a billing account, but we did look at those allowances before. Now, within that account, you set up what's called a project. So you can see my project there is called School Data Export Steve Smith. So it's coming from my domain. So that sets up what's called a project. That project will suck in all the data and then we'll spit it somewhere else. Now that project might send some data here, some data there, some over there. So you can actually, once you've got that connector set up, lots of things you can do with it. So that's on your Google Cloud platform, or you may hear it referred to as GCP. Okay. Again, there's some really nice teachings around students around what the cloud is. The fact that you can run, when you're in the Google Cloud platform, there are all these things that will do stuff in the cloud. So it is a really nice way to explain what cloud computing is. Right, let's jump to the next one, Chris. So once you've set up your cloud account, you go into your admin console and you go BigQuery export and you go, let's spit some data out. And it will say, what is your project ID? And you'll notice there, School Data Export Steve Smith is the name of my project in GCP. So what I just said is...
Worth pointing out to you, Steve, too, that this isn't admin level stuff. This is not something the garden variety teacher can do, right? This is admin stuff.
So this bit is,
yep.
Once you've got the project set up, you can use the Data Studio end of things as well, or you can set them up for yourself with your own data. So yeah, within the admin console, you do set the export up. You tell it where it's going to go. So that's that project that's there. And there could be multiple projects as well. Now, down the bottom, it says restrict the data set to a specific geographic location. Okay, so you can choose where you want your data to reside. Where you're using Google Cloud as well, there are some cloud locations in Australia. So there is a possibility, so your data can stay in there as well. So those are just a couple of things to think about. Let's jump over to the next one to get a really crazy picture. Now, this one, bear with me. It looks a bit nuts, but it makes sense in my brain, and hopefully it will in yours as well. So Data Studio is over on the right-hand side there. So that is a dashboard, effectively. All those data points are just being pulled from my domain. So what I've done is I have gone into Data Studio and I've grabbed the template that we showed before. So that's a template that's sitting right there. In that template, I've then said add data. I've picked BigQuery, and then it will say, well, what project do you want to use? School data export Steve Smith sitting in there, connected to my dashboard, and all of a sudden we've got that connection between our console, BigQuery warehouse, and then the output, which is Data Studio. Now you'll also notice there are two other tiles at the top there. There is Google Sheets, and there is a file upload. So I could choose to add data to my dashboard from a CSV. Oh, we talked about those before. Or from a sheet. Now, inside Google Sheets, there are actually pre-built BigQuery connectors. So you can start to make more little projects as well. So if you've got something residing in a sheet, that can be pulled into your dashboard as well. And
so
yep.
if I just pop into the sheet, Steve, if I go to data down here where it says data connectors,
there you go. Yeah, and when you go connect to BigQuery, it'll say, what project do you want to connect to? And you go, School Data Export Steve Smith.
Yeah.
It'll all start bringing into that big container of data.
Yeah, because a lot of people understand sheets, but like the BigQuery thing's a bit of a black box. So
totally.
You can bring all that data in here and look at it. But typically when you're looking at a spreadsheet, you might have, 10, 20, 30, 100, maybe 1,000, couple of thousand rows. There's a big spreadsheet. When you're pulling in from BigQuery, you can have 100,000 rows. So you're talking really big data sets, but you can pull them in here as well.
And the nice thing about this is that once you've got these connectors set up, you can go back into your sheet, add more data, and it'll just drag it. So BigQuery automates all the movement of data across there. So there's a whole lot of stuff in here that you can get. Chris, if you just see down the bottom right, you see the Google Classroom
Data Studio. I'm looking at the templates in Data Studio, and there's this one here called Google Classroom Engagement Report. It's already pre-built.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is once you go and do all that, like that one-time stuff where you go into the admin console and you tick and enable it and sort of make that data available.
Yep.
Then you simply go to here, grab that template, point it to that data, and now all of your school data is being represented visually, so you can start.
Exactly. If you just scroll down a little bit more there, Chris.
Yeah.
So that one there, world population data, you can grab that, and there is a publicly available data set of world population. So you can share that with students. You can go edit and share at the top. It'll pop you into an editable version of this. And then you can start to have a play with the data. You can add new pages. So what we've got here is down the right-hand side is all the data, all the different data things that are available with this. And it realistically is a drag and drop situation. And you can drag things across, you can move things around, you can change what's on there. When you drag data onto a Data Studio, it will go, oh, this looks like it's going to be a map. And it'll give you a map template. Or it'll give you a line graph, or it'll give you a bar graph, or it'll give you a table. So there's a heap of stuff you can do in here, but the idea is you have a data set, you have BigQuery as your connector, you have Data Studio as your output. And Data Studio also has a whole lot of getting started guides as well for you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So I kind of said I could spend days talking about this. I've just started playing with them in the last couple of months, and I get more and more excited about it because there is so much you can do, but there's so much you can get your students to do with data as well. Even if you start a real simple spreadsheet, drag some data in, have a play with it, and start to think about what can we actually start to do. Dan said he used Data Studio to build a student absentee reporting dashboard. Fantastic. Teachers also use Data Studio to mark their role and see who's absent. Brilliant. So there's lots of stuff you can do with data, and that's a great use there, Dan. You can pull stuff in there, and you can share that dashboard with different people. So
I have a good example that unfortunately I can't show because it's got some real student data in there. But one of our good teacher friends in Western Australia built a Data Studio project recently where he was importing, because in Data Studio you can import from multiple data sources, and so long as there's something in common, and that's what Steve was alluding to before with the student email address, so long as there's a common email address for each of those data sources, you can tie them together with what database people call a primary key. And what this teacher did in WA was to build a dashboard that pulls in all the historical data from NAPLAN for every student, all the current data for students from school-based assessment, all the data from what is the equivalent, I don't know what they call it in WA, but like the higher school certificate, that kind of thing. So they were pulling all of these data sources for these students and then using it to be able to predict at the start of year 11 with, I think, something like 4% accuracy, 96% accuracy, what the student's final ATAR grade was likely to be at the end of year 12. Now, that's simply by taking a whole bunch of data, running some analytics on it and saying, well, based on all of this stuff, this is what we think you're going to get. So, I mean, I'd love to show you that, but like I said, it's got real student data in it. But there's some fantastic uses of all this data once you can start to pull it in, manipulate it, and visualize it together. And Data Studio, if you've never tried it, like just take a poke around it. It's one of those things that looks daunting, and then you use it for 10 minutes and you go, actually, this is pretty easy. So, yeah.
Now, I just dropped a link in the chat there, which is the Getting Started page, which has some videos about it. There is also a Google group of Data Studio in schools, which you can join. There's a whole lot of conversation going on in there about that. I'll grab the link for that and drop that in. So that's Data Studio. BigQuery is our connector. Your source of data is whatever you've got. Testing data, absence data, all that stuff can be brought in. One-time connection to set it all up, then automate it for yourself.
Awesome. Well done. Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to mention two tools that are not made by Google, but they're really cool. And if you don't want to mess around with all the Data Studio stuff, but you're just simply looking for another way to do that, one thing I would recommend is a tool called Schoollytics. Again, it's a third-party tool, not made by Google. There is a cost involved in using it. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I hear really good things about Schoollytics, and what I've seen of it looks amazing. And what Schoollytics does is a similar kind of thing to what Steve was saying with sort of, importing your data in and then visualizing it, but they build all the templates for you. So you've got all these pre-built visualization stuff. Some of you probably know Alice Keeler. Alice Keeler is quite sort of famous around the traps in the Google world. Alice now works at Schoollytics and is driving a whole bunch of really neat stuff with Schoollytics. And Craig has just made that observation.
He has indeed, yeah. And she's building all sorts of things for as well. So if you do want to have a look, and I think there is a free trial for teaching all that sort of stuff as well. And it's one of those things that gives you a kind of a look at the possible with data. And you can look at it and you go, you know what? I'm going to give it a bash at building it myself. Or you can buy that as well. So yeah, it's a great product.
If I can draw a parallel, some of you know if you use Google Maps, it will show you where the traffic is. So you can see where the traffic jams are and whatnot. The way Google Maps does that is by looking at mobile phones. People are driving around with their mobile phone in the car. And so by taking the aggregate position of all these anonymized phones, we can start to look at where they're bunching up and therefore kind of interpret that as being a traffic jam. That same approach where you've got enough massive data that you can start to make inferences from that data, that's what you can start to do with school data when you have enough of it. And so, that's the idea behind all this is, if you bring enough big data in and you then analyze it in a way that lets you spot patterns, you can start to see things that you might not have seen otherwise. Anyway, so that's Schoollytics. That's a pretty cool one. And the other one I just want to mention is a thing called Classwork Zoom. Classwork Zoom is written by an amazing teacher called Eric Burton, who did this as a side project, and it kind of grew into something that was way bigger than he expected. If you go to the Classwork Zoom website, there's a neat little story about how this came about. But what it is, it's a Chrome extension that you can run, and then it will apply to your Google Classroom, and you can pick which class, which students, which activities you want to do, and it will give you a visual look on a timeline on how that classroom activity looks over time. I've linked a video in here that, or if you just go to the Classwork Zoom website, it's also there with a nice, there's a couple of good overview videos there. But it basically means that you can see, okay, this student worked on this task for this long, and each of these points here, this is where they copied and pasted something, and you can see where they paste something in and whether it was plagiarized. It's some really useful, insightful stuff. Some people might say, well, why isn't this in Classroom already? Well, we're working on it, but right now, this is a good thing to do. Classwork Zoom is free for teachers. Technically, there is a paid version of it, but honestly, you can do most of what you'd want to do in the free version. So if you haven't, check it out. It is a really, really cool tool, and Eric is a really cool guy who deserves the support, I think. So those are the two things I wanted to mention. Oops, I'm not going to play that video right now. But we're just going to finish off with talking about some what's new with Google stuff. We've got some neat stuff. This first one is really hard to show you because it involves being in a Meet call, and we're in a Meet call right now, so it's one of the things that's hard to show. It's a bit Inception. So I've got a little.
Hey Chris, yeah, I'm just thinking. Do you want to just escape out of slideshow mode?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess I can do it this way, right?
Oh, I haven't got it on there. Oh, it hasn't popped into this account yet.
Oh no, that's interesting. It hasn't.
So up here where Chris is just clicking there, what there is that actually I've got it in my account. Do you want me to?
Yeah, you want to do it? Yeah.
Why not? Let's do that.
Let me stop sharing, and I will hand over to you. While you're handing over, I'll just explain what it is. So you know how if you're lucky enough to have, so a lot of people work on a laptop these days, all right? Or you might work on a desktop computer, but you've got one screen. If you're lucky, you might have two screens, a second one connected. And if you're trying to do work while you're in a call, that's fine because you can put the call on one screen and you have to work on the other screen, and that's fine. But if you're working on a single screen, very often, you're either in the call or you're in the document, but you can't. It's hard to be in both, right? And as soon as you're working in the document, now you can't see everyone's faces anymore, and so on. So, Steve, let's go.
So yeah, and this is rolling out. It has been announced, which is great. So up the top here, you'll see that there is. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Oh, yeah. I can drop this down, and this will now give me the ability to bring the call here. So what I can do is I can click on that call, and it will actually put the video down the sidebar of slides. It'll work in docs as well, and so you can actually bring the call into what you're working on. It also now has hand raising, has the chat, so you can actually have the call sitting down the side here. So it's a really, really cool tool to have. Now, kind of when I first heard about it, I went, I don't know whether I'd ever use that, but when Chris and I are planning things, oops, 15 minutes left. I haven't charged my Chromebook since yesterday. I can actually, Chris and I can be working on something. I can bring the call here, and I don't have to be looking at multiple places or lose the Meet call because it disappeared somewhere.
It's going to be hard to demo, Steve, I think. So just
yeah. I don't think I'll let's give it a go. We'll see what happens. I might drop out. This is weird. We'll see what. Oh, okay. Here we go. Go.
Yeah, good idea. I don't know what happened there. Are you back with us?
I am back. I'm back. So that's how it looks, and it's a bizarre thing to try and demo a Meet call in a Meet call.
Just go to slide 19, Steve, and bring it up and put it in present mode, and we'll just show. There's a little animation here that will show you what we're talking about.
And that always
basically when this launches, if you haven't got it already, it is rolling out right now. So some people might have it, some people might not. You'll see that you've got that button up the top there that looks like a little colored icon. When you click on it, it gives you the option to click on the currently running meeting and join the call, but you're joining the call inside the document. So it brings up that panel on the right-hand side, and all the people in the call are in that panel. And although this goes through, see down the bottom there, you've got the ability to mute your microphone and your camera and stuff. You can click on the three dots, and so you can have your chat in the call, the whole thing. So basically, it lets you work in a doc while you're on a call within one screen instead of having to jump between two.
And you can also, you can pop it back out to Meet as well. So if you're in there and you're done with that, you can pop back out and you can keep the call going. So lots of things you can do. And I think this, if you've kind of been with us on our journey of looking at the development of Docs for a while, you can kind of see where Docs is going. It's becoming a lot more complex than just a little old typewriter that Docs used to be 7, 8, 9 years ago.
All right, so if I get you to stop sharing because I need to jump to my screen.
Yep, definitely.
And I'm gonna go this one. Okay, so two last things I want to show you that I knew with Google. One is this one called Calendar Appointment Scheduling.
So good.
Some of you who've been around for a while might remember that inside Google Calendar, for years now, there's been a thing called appointment slots. And if you've got really long memories, you might remember, gosh, it was must be about 6 or 7 years ago now, Google said they were taking away appointment slots, and there was such an outcry from the education community that it was one of the few times Google actually reneged on one of their cancellation decisions because so many people were so vocal about it. So appointment slots lasted for a long time. It's now been replaced by a much better solution, and I'll show you how it works. So when you hit this create button up here, you've now got this option that says appointment schedule. Notice it says schedule, not slots. So if it says appointment slots, you're still on the old one. If it says appointment schedule, this is the new thing.
And you can go into your settings and switch the new one on, can't you, Chris?
You can, yeah. So I'm just going to do it that way. I'll show you the other way I prefer to do it. So let's just say, hypothetical, you're having a parent-teacher night next Tuesday, right? So I'm going to go to next Tuesday here. And so my parent-teacher night is going to go from, say, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., right? So I'm gonna have the ability for parents to book a time with me to come and see me. So I'm going to block out that time, and when that pops up, I'm going to make it an appointment schedule. So I'm not creating an event or any of these other things. It's an appointment schedule. When I do that, it lets me. It's confirming there the time that I've picked. It says create a new appointment schedule. Great, because I don't have any. If I already had some existing ones, I could add to it or add a different one. So we've only got the first one here, so we'll say continue. It's blocked out that time for me, and you can see it's put it into slots. Now, I can choose, this is 30-minute slots. Let's say I only want 15-minute slots. Okay, so we can do that. Let's say we're actually having parent-teacher night on Tuesday and Wednesday night. Well, let's just click on this little thing here, and it adds that, and I actually don't want to go from 9. Let's say parent-teacher. It's a whole day of parent-teacher meetings the next day. Let's say it goes from 10 till 4. Right? Wow. Don't you love days like that? So anyway, you can set that up. So you can set all the things up here like that. If you need to split a day in two, you can do that. You can click on, I think it's that one. So if you want to split the day in two, so maybe you're going to go from 2 till 12:30, and then you're going to have a break for lunch. So then you're going to pick it up again at say 1:30, and then go through till say 5. Right, so you're customizing these appointment slots to whatever times you want to do. If you wanted them to repeat weekly, so if I go to the following week here, you'll notice, hard to tell, but I'm going from week to week, and it's following. I don't want it to repeat weekly. This is a one-off event, so I just say don't repeat. What do I do then? I messed that up, but anyway, I'm just going to stick with this one for now then. So scheduling window, how long in advance do you want people to be able to book into this calendar? So, 60 days, let's say it's, 7 days, right? What's the minimum time before the appointment can be booked? You obviously don't want someone making an appointment at 1 minute to 4 for a 4 o'clock appointment, right? So you might want to say, well, I want at least sort of, 6 hours notice, right? So you set these to whatever you want. When you do this, you can come down here and you can say, like, do I want to add a buffer time? Maybe I don't want to go from one 15-minute appointment to the next 15-minute appointment. Maybe I want a 5-minute break between them. So I can come in here and say, all right, I want a 5-minute break. And how many bookings should I allow people to make per day?
One.
I don't know, maybe 4, 5?
5?
Whatever. I don't know.
5 parent interviews.
I won't do that because it's parent-teacher night. But you could, you could block out the number if you wanted. Anyway, so you go next. You can put a little name in here. We'll call this parent interviews. And if you want to put a sort of it'll pick up your Google account identity and list it at the top there. If there's a specific location, you can put it in here. But if you're saying doing virtual ones, you can say add a Google Meet call to each one of these time slots, and it'll generate a Meet link for every single time slot. So perhaps if you're doing virtual things, you can put a short description in here, blah, 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 right? And when you say save, it actually then blocks this time out like this. But here's the neat thing. I'm going to do this, and maybe you guys will help me out here. If I click this open booking page, this is what the public will see. This is the link you would give the parents, right? So the parents would get this. I'm going to take this and just copy that in there now and drop that in the chat. So if any of you would like to play, just click on that little link in the chat there, pick a time slot, book yourself an appointment in one of those available time slots there, and let's see what happens. So if I go back to my calendar, it's there. I can see that, so Jenny's just booked one, Nick's just booked one. So those time slots are being taken. And if I was to click here and go back into the booking page now, you can see that I've got far less booking slots now because you guys have taken them, right? And so it only shows me what's available. So there are some other services. There's a service called Calendly that I used to use that does something very similar to this. I don't need to use Calendly anymore because this does exactly what I need now. So again, it's this is, I believe this is available in the free version of Workspace. So this is not a paid feature. Everyone can have access to this. And that's how that works. And, so
the nice thing about it as well is it does do that automatic meet link, whereas before you used to have to go back in and add a meet link, and you can choose to be virtual, a location, or a meet link. And for a report night, if you want to go virtual, saves you a whole lot of problems.
Jennifer, no, it should just be available. It is rolling out, so if you're not seeing it, maybe it just hasn't rolled into your account yet, but it should be there.
And if you don't see it after a while, go up to your gear wheel and you can choose to change it as well.
Yeah, and then just quickly, I just want to make sure you're aware of that repeating thing. So again, I'll add another one in here and say appointment schedule, right? And because I've got an appointment schedule already for the parent night, I can actually add to that existing schedule. So maybe parent night here is going to go Tuesdays and Fridays, right? We can do that to anyone. But say create a new appointment schedule, and you can create an entirely different one that's not connected to the previous one. And when you do that, just be aware this repeat weekly thing. I think this is doesn't repeat or repeats weekly. If by default it's on a repeat thing. So if you want to set up, say, a regular session where, I don't know, you could book a time for students to book in and sort of, have an open hours thing with their teacher to ask questions or whatever. You could do that and have it happen the same time every week. So it's a really neat feature. I really, really like it. It's one of my favorite new things in Calendar. So hopefully you guys will check it out.
Nice.
Any questions on that one? Cool. And well, the last thing then I want to show you, because we are right on time, and I'll be really quick with this one, and that is something that people have been asking for a long time. So speaking of scheduling, if you go into the classwork page now on Calendar and you go, on Google Classroom, and you create an assignment. So I'm just switch to a different class. I've got 3 classes here. Let me just show you. I've got 3 classes: Year 9 English, 9A English, 9B English, and 9C English. They're all Year 9 English classes. They're going to do the same assignment. So if I go into Year 9 English and I look at my classwork page, here's one I've started earlier for you. So I've got a little Poetry of Edgar Allan Poe assignment here ready to go. I'll pop in there and just get ready to send this out. So this is just a little poetry assignment. I want Year 9A, 9B, and 9C to do this, but 9A happens on a Monday, 9B happens on a Wednesday, and 9C happens on a Thursday, and I don't want them to get it until it's time for their class. So what I can do is go up here now and say I want it to go to 9A, 9B, and 9C. And then when I click on the little drop-down arrow over here before I send it out, I can schedule it. And because it's now being scheduled to multiple classes that happened at different times of the week, I can go in here and choose when the publish dates are. Prior to this new tool here, everything got scheduled at the same time, which a lot of teachers didn't like. So now you can come in and say, so this one is going to go out on Monday at 8 o'clock, and it's going to be due on a Wednesday, right? And this one's going to go out on whatever. You guys get the idea. This one's going to go out on Wednesday, and it's going to be due on Friday, and so on and so on. So I'll just put anything now for now. So I don't want to keep going, but you get the idea. So once you put all that in, and you can schedule it into specific categories, and things might go into different categories and different classes if you want. When I hit the schedule button, it will then schedule that out. And now if I look at 9A English, as soon as this is finished doing its magic, so this one's scheduled for April 25. If I switch to a different class, so I switch to a different class, so I go 9B, and I look in 9B's classwork, and here's this one scheduled for April 27, and so on and so on. So that's the new scheduling tool in Classroom. I think it's pretty intuitive to use. Just be aware it's there now. All you got to do is select multiple classes and then go to schedule, and it'll just pop up for you.
Brilliant.
Oh, and we're at time. So that's everything we wanted to cover. So
hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I love doing this when you say we're at time. Have you still got your Google account open? You can manage your account. You could choose your language settings.
No, I closed that tab.
Okay, because on there, here's a little hot tip: is you can choose the input tools there as well. So for us in New Zealand, if you want the Māori keyboard to be able to give macrons, underneath language, you go input tools. You can go the Māori keyboard and the Māori handwriting input, and it allows you to do macrons. So you can do that built in, and that will come up in Gmail, Docs, Sheets, Slides, all that sort of stuff. So any of those languages where you need macrons and a graph and all that, choose an input tool. It'll appear on your layouts.
Excellent. Good tip. We do these webinars every month, like I said in the beginning, third Thursday of every month. It's been Steve and I the last couple of times, but hopefully we'll get some of our other team in so you don't have to be listening to us to drabble on all the time. Next month, we're talking about digital responsibility and fluency. So that should be fun. And so you can register, or you guys are all registered. Tell your friends, like if you know people who aren't registered for these and you think these are valuable, just let people know. It'd be super handy. Someone asked in the beginning, I can't think who it was, I think it might have been, oh no, sorry, I've forgotten, where we keep all our previous webinars. If you go there, bit.ly/AUNZ_webinars, you'll find everything's kept on that site. As soon as I stop recording this one, I will take the recording and attach it there as well. So you'll find everything is stored there. We're not actually allowed to make a Google site here at Google, strangely enough. So this is actually a Google Slides deck that's simply been published. So hopefully that's still okay. And finally, if you need a PD certificate for having given up an hour of your precious time this afternoon, you can go there, bit.ly/GFE certificate, capital G, capital E. Fill in that form and it will automatically, through the magic of Autocrat, send you a certificate straight away. And that's basically it.
Hey, Chris, Nick just had a question around the rubrics, around exporting individual attainment data for each criterion. At the moment, you will export that all as one big export, but depending on where you bring it into, you'll be able to do different things with the data as well. So if you use keywords in the task names, you'll be able to search by that as well. So there's a couple of different things you can do once you've got it out. At the moment, the data coming out of Classroom comes out in quite a linear fashion. But also, if you have a look at what Schoololytics is doing, it gives you a hint of what the possible is coming down. So things like hashtags and assignments will allow you to drag some data out of those as well. So now I can't kind of give you a definite answer right now, but there is some stuff you can look at once you've got the data out, what you can do with it. So yeah, the export is kind of quite rigidly set at the moment, but there is a lot of work being done around data export at the moment.
Yeah, I think the short answer, Nick, is right now the answer is probably no, but I think Classroom is getting a lot of attention at the moment, and I think you're going to see a lot of cool things coming to Classroom over the next little while.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. If you want to hang around for a couple of minutes and ask questions or chat or anything, we will happily hang out with you, but I'll stop the recording for now. So thanks for joining us.